The latest flashpoint as far as the Parliament is concerned, well, the Congress MP Manickam Tagore has now raised the issue of COVID curbs impacting fair coverage of the Parliament. In fact, he's written to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha saying that these COVID restrictions must be lifted and an old system of covering the Parliament must be restored. Remember, there's no central hall as far as the new Parliament is concerned. Manickam Tagore says that, well, this hampers fair coverage of the Parliament and there's enough space in the new Parliament to accommodate all accredited journalists. That's what the point that Congress has raised now. The BJP is yet to react to it. But what really have been the experiences of our reporters who've been covering the Parliament for years now? Aishwarya now joins us on the phone line. So Aishwarya, in your experience, do you think fair coverage of the House in any way is hampered? The point that Manickam Tagore there is making, given the fact that there's no central hall as far as the new Parliament is concerned, he says full access to reporters must be restored.
Well, certainly, it was pre-COVID era when we used to take our video journalists along with the live view units and the proper camera kit to the Parliament inside to have a coverage and to have interviews of the leaders and to cover the Parliament proceedings as well. But as soon as the COVID hit the entire country, it was the COVID restrictions which came into the fold earlier, and then the video journalists were barred to enter the Parliament. It was only the quotas for each media organization which was allowed to enter the Parliament premises while the Parliament proceedings were on. There were also permanent passes that were earlier issued to some of the journalists who were accredited, but that committee also was stalled because of the COVID protocols, and later it was just restricted to the reporters to go inside with their mobile phones to do the interviews and the reactions of the leaders and their coverages, which clearly had stalled a lot of coverage from the reporting point of view, from the journalistic point of view, as there is no video journalist which is now being allowed, and also restrictions to the reporters who go inside the Parliament proceedings. Therefore, the reason perhaps, when we also had a word with the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, last week, perhaps they told that, yes,
Absolutely.
Of course, there would be new directions that will be issued after the Lok Sabha Speaker will give fresh guidelines. But certainly that didn't happen, and therefore now what we are witnessing is Congress MP Manickam Tagore writing to Lok Sabha Speaker Birla urging...
And this is perhaps likely to escalate into a flashpoint. Sorry to cut you off there, Aishwarya, but thanks very much for joining us with that update. In fact, the man who set the cat among the pigeons, Manickam Tagore, is now joining us live on the phone line. Mr. Tagore, as I said, this is something that perhaps could turn into a flashpoint between the government and the Congress and the opposition here. What you say in your letter is that full access must be allowed to reporters covering the Parliament, and there's some sort of, restrictions on fair coverage of the Parliament in the name of COVID protocol. Are you planning to raise this on the floor of the House as well?
Yeah, this issue of the entry of the journalists has always been an important thing in parliamentary proceedings. We all know that there was a central hall, and the senior journalists who has covered the Parliament for more than 10 years were allowed inside the Parliament Central Hall to access the parliamentary proceedings and covering the Parliament. This was a regular feature in the old Parliament House, which is now the Samvidhan Bhavan. But after the BJP government in Delhi, gradually the restrictions on the journalists who were covering the Parliament increased. And it reached its peak in 2020 when the COVID came. In the name of COVID restrictions, a lot of journalists who had been years together, their services has been barred, who had reported for many years many historic events in the Parliament. And that now that COVID restrictions is continuing till today, and we had shifted to a new Parliament which has more space, more availability of all the facilities, all these kind of things which the government claims.
Okay.
So my question is that when we are having this much of space, facilities available, why we are restricting the regional and other senior journalists who have been covering Delhi or who are in journalist position for more than 10, 20 years? Why this? Uh, Therefore, I wrote to Honorable Speaker to have a look into it and take a positive decision about the
That's a fair
COVID
point you're
restrictions.
making there. That's a fair point you're making, that given the fact that it's been almost 2 years to the COVID pandemic, full access to reporters must be restored. In some way, this could, as many would say, be touted as something that's against press freedom and press rights. RP Singh of the BJP is also with us. Mr. Tagore, stay on. RP Singh, how would you react to what Mr. Tagore is saying? He's now written to the Speaker of the House as well, saying that, in the name of COVID protocol, complete access to journalists and fair coverage of the parliament is being hampered. How would you respond to that? Why is the old system of covering parliament not being restored by the government?
Well, that speaker will have to answer, or the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha will have to answer. But I appreciate Mr. Tagore's concern that if there is a relaxation overall in the COVID norms, then some similar relaxation should apply to the parliament, keeping in mind the health of the parliamentarians, because they are the people who decide for the country. There could have been some restrictions, and I'm hopeful that the Speaker and the Chairperson of the Rajya Sabha both should consider whatever the best option, whatever the best possibility, just but keeping the security and the health of the parliamentarian should be the uppermost, and then whatever has to be done should be done.
That's a sort of a very conciliatory response there from RP Singh. Manickam Tagore, your response to that? The BJP spokesperson says that, he appreciates your concerns, but the health and security of the parliament are the topmost priority, and there could be some sort of consensus as far as this entire issue is concerned.
Yeah, it is not, but Mr. RP Singh's view is a correct view, because it's not a BJP's view or decision, it is the Speaker's decision. The Speaker, Honorable Speaker, is a well experienced parliamentarian, and the Speaker has been with this chair for more than 5 years, and he knows us and knows these restrictions also well, and he is a person who has to take this call. Therefore, I wrote a letter to Honorable Speaker a few days before, and today I had released that to the media, because a few days back I wrote to Honorable Speaker, and I know that Honorable Speaker will take a right decision on this issue, and which many of the journalists who had been years together, they had been covering.
Absolutely. It's a fair debate there, and good to see some sort of consensus here as well. Mr. Manickam Tagore, RP Singh, thanks very much for joining us here on NDTV. We sincerely hope that there's some consensus on this. But what is, this debate? How do we look at this debate in the context of press rights and press freedom? Mr. Anant Nag, who's the president of the Editors Guild of India, also joins us now on the phone line. Thanks very much, Mr. Nath, for speaking with us. Your response to what Mr. Manickam Tagore of the Congress has said, that this is in some way against fair coverage of the parliament. The BJP spokesperson on the broadcast interestingly said that this is something that must be looked at, and there can be some sort of consensus vis-a-vis this issue, but the health and security of the parliament are the topmost priorities.
Yeah, thank you. I think as journalist organization, we completely agree with Mr. Tagore's letter and his concerns. In fact, the Guild will also be writing to the Speaker because the question of health and security, I think we have passed those days. And all we're asking is that there was a certain free access to journalists, to accredited journalists, even before COVID. So it will be only fair now that those fears are, we are past this fear, the same access to be restored. And as far as we know, there is certain discretion that the chair exercises in terms of even selecting which journalists to be given access, and such discretion should not be exercised. It should be free and unfettered access to as many journalists, because there's a lot of reporting that happens on the sidelines of the parliament and talking to various members, which is right now severely curtailed. So it's time, it's high time that this access is restored.